I am Joel Oleson. I'm an MVP and Microsoft Regional Director. I work at Cyclotron, and I also have a contract at Sony through a company called Yo, which handles their contractors. So I'm what you call a fractional employee, where essentially I've got a 50% job with Cyclotron and a 50% job with this Sony gig that I just started. And I also do a side gig through Joel 365. And one thing you should know about me is that I love travel. And so often you'll see me traveling around the world, and it's my passion. It's absolutely my passion. I'm on a quest to go to every country in the world, and I've got 16 left in Africa and 2 outside of Africa. And let's have Chris, over to you.
Thanks. Yeah, I love the picture. Thank you. So, hey everybody, I am Chris Barber. I am a fast track solution architect for the Power Platform by Microsoft. I'm one of those 30 people that has that for 2021. I am a senior customer engineer at Microsoft, focusing on their support for mission critical teams. So I work with some of those companies to harbor and secure their environments, their apps, their solutions. And as you can see from this picture here, I do love my dog. He is snoring right behind me. So I'll turn it back over to you, Joel.
And yeah, and I am gonna put my LinkedIn in the chat if anybody would like to connect. I am a fairly open networker from a perspective of people in the community. I'm a fan of being able to connect to people in the community. So you'll notice that about my feed. And my last post on LinkedIn includes webinars that I'm doing, and it also includes events that I'm doing in the next couple of months. So check that out. A little bit more about myself. I mentioned the travel thing. I do love to spend time with the community. In fact, I was supposed to be speaking in Cameroon a couple of weeks ago, but they wouldn't let us in due to COVID stuff. And the Slovenian conference that I was speaking at full on canceled. But typically, I am speaking at conferences around the globe. Here you can also see the SharePoint and Teams wedding from a couple years ago, and the Ignite InfoPath funeral, or the InfoPath funeral as well. So fun things. The agenda for today, I want to first talk about the Viva Suite and the updates from Ignite. What is this whole Viva wave? Helping you kind of understand what is all this stuff about Microsoft Viva. But then we'll really drill in a little bit further on Viva connections. And Chris has actually spent a number of times has actually deployed Viva connections. So I definitely want him to talk about his experience actually deploying it. And we've got a demo for you as well. And I do want to talk about the momentum. It's incredible to me through the pandemic just how quickly Teams has been adopted and how it's just gone crazy. Teams has grown 10x in the last couple of years. In fact, if you looked at the trajectory of how it surpassed Slack first, and then it surpassed Zoom in daily active users, and it's still going like crazy. I think we're talking about 300,000 plus organizations that use it, or maybe it was 200,000 educational institutions thereabouts, and around 500,000 organizations. And from a storage perspective, when you start talking about Microsoft SharePoint Online, it's actually grown as well, 10x where it's growing 100 petabytes each month. So wild stuff. The employee experience, that's what this is all about. I love this quote. Our team has been working over the last couple of years to help our employees be productive no matter where they're located. That investment enabled us to keep running seamlessly during the shift to remote work, but we still had work to do to rethink the employee experience for hybrid work. I think that this is actually the case with most companies, especially that move to remote work in a big way, where you couldn't rely on your corporate networks or your apps. There was that essentially kind of massive move to how do we support everybody from home, and a lot of that was with Microsoft Teams and with Microsoft 365. But as well, it's not just about providing the software, and I think that was kind of a wake up call for a lot of companies. Was how do we actually first, let's get the services going and ensure that they're actually solid, that our support systems are working, that our employees are well and healthy and be able to be connected. But there's something more that has been needed to encapsulate company culture, and especially with new employee onboarding. And there's a lot of churn that's going on in the industry right now. A lot of people who've been leaving their jobs and joining new jobs, and consultants who are saying, hey, I hate consulting now. I want to just go work at a company. And people who've worked at companies who've said, you know what, I don't want to work here anymore. I want to go work at a nonprofit, or what am I doing? There's a lot of people asking questions, and employee experience has never been more important, I would say, than now. Microsoft has been doing very well. You look at the Forrester wave for 2021, you look at the Gartner wave for 2021 from a content perspective, the content platforms, but even beyond that, you start looking at the meeting space and communication, collaboration, all of these different spaces. Microsoft's been doing very well in the industry. Not just from a deployment perspective, but respected very broadly, and is doing very well. Now, a lot of people who have come from the SharePoint world, this idea of using Teams as the new front end might be new to you. But myself, being a SharePoint person and then seeing just how well Teams has been adopted, and understanding this vision of Teams as the front end, Teams as this organizing layer, Teams as a way of being the hub for modern teamwork, I think that this actually simplifies the user experience. If we can make sure that the apps connect really well, and that an individual has their tasks, they have their communication, their approvals from a management perspective, the more that we can actually plug into this Teams experience, we're seeing a lot more of a streamlined experience, but also reducing the context switching, and being able to get insights and answers and learning and all this knowledge. And you can kind of see how Viva fits into this. And this is a little bit out of order, but this idea of Teams as a platform, or Teams as this organizing layer, you've got the productivity suite, you've got the third-party apps, and with Viva, you've got this new employee experience of connections, topics, learning and insights, and I'll dive into each of those individually. But from an extensibility perspective, building the solutions, there's the low code, no code with the Power Platform, but you've also got this pro code, whether you're using Visual Studio or Azure DevOps, and any combination thereof across those things. There's actually a lot of pro devs who are obviously using the Power Platform as well to get stuff done. But it's really kind of cool to see how these work as building blocks or interlocking pieces, or just kind of understanding this rich, very rich ecosystem. And why don't you jump in here, Chris, to share your thoughts? I know you've been working with this a ton.
Yeah, thanks, Joel. So I think for everybody, this seems like a lot. You're trying to figure out where and how each of these things plug in. But if you take a step back just to simplify it a little bit, everybody has a Apple TV, a Roku. You have something at home that has all of these disparate systems kind of connecting so that you can watch ABC or NBC or ESPN or whatever it is. So when you think about Teams now being that front end, think of that as, your Apple TV, right? You have all of these apps, whether it's Power Apps or Viva Connections or Office or any of those things. And I'm simply going to add the modules that I want for myself or for my staff to essentially bring all of that into one central location so it's easier for them, reducing that context switching and getting them to where they're efficient throughout their day. That analogy is tried to help simplify kind of where this is and how everything plugs in. So I'll give it back to you, Joel.
Thanks. So this, there was a lot of research done here, and it was not even just at Microsoft. Microsoft was leaning on some outside parties to get a number of elements of research around what are the seven key elements to a great employee experience. And in this research, they came out with these 7 key areas, and you can kind of see how the products themselves align with these. But let me just kind of talk about these without the technology first, because I think any company who's trying to focus on employee experience needs to understand what are we actually going to do, not from a technology perspective, but what are the areas we want to focus on. So these, and I'm going to kind of just work my way around the wheel, starting at the top. First, starting about communications. So you start talking about employee communications, and this is announcements, news, events, these kinds of things. How do you communicate with corporate communications? I would say this is also where executive communication fits in, where you start talking about how does the company leadership engage with the employees. Sorry, I think the connection's not as great in this room. Let me switch. So, can you guys hear me okay? Chris, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. You're good.
Okay, I just want to make sure. It's like Teams is letting me know that my network quality isn't so great, so I'm switching rooms. But talking about employee experience, there's that communications perspective of people need to be informed as well as engaged, but there's the announcements, news, events, things like that. Company resources like your benefits, workplace services, various employee portals and apps. Think about it from a legal perspective or compliance or even my pay stub, how I keep engaged with the organization. And the things that I care about. I mean, I want to make sure I'm getting paid. And then there's the insights, analytics, surveys, feedback, sentiment, wanting to know what kind of contributions I'm making, but also when I post something, are people viewing it? Are they liking it? Being able to do a poll, those kinds of things, asking questions. There's knowledge, and knowledge is about people and experts and the content that gets generated, tasks, projects, things like that. The real work inside the organization and my access to that knowledge and experts and expertise. The communities, people that who are like me. My ability to be a company, when you've got an employee, that employee, how do you make it sticky? How do you make sure that they're happy? And I'm not talking just about well-being, but talking about diversity and interest groups and team cohesion, communities from that perspective. On the well-being side, we're talking about physical, mental, emotional, and a lot of times they use the words work-life balance. And a lot of people say there's no such thing as work-life balance. But I think that Sharon and Jonathan are working that out this week. Growth and development, things like coaching, learning, onboarding, talent and performance. All these things, having a career and being able to see your career over time and recognizing accomplishments, these kinds of things. So these are the 7 areas that are focused on what a great employee experience is. Now, as I dive into the modules of Viva, you're going to see how they kind of line up. And this is an older slide that doesn't have the new icons. You're going to see the new icons in just a second. But we're going to be diving into for the most part on Viva Connections, but I'll give you a slide on each of these other modules as well. And Viva Connections, I'd say that the quick way to understand it is this is about culture and communication. It was formerly known as the Teams home site app or the home site app. And now we call it Viva Connections. And you could say that it launched and was even considered GA back in the spring. But now there's a new version of it, and there's a new way to connect. And so these things are still being rolled out. But essentially, Viva Connections has a path. It is a product. It's part of a suite. It's free. It's included with Microsoft 365. It's included with Office 365 licensing as well. And anyway, it's about staying engaged, informed, feeds, and dashboards, resources, so on. Viva Topics is about these topics. It's about connecting to knowledge and experts and vice versa. The entire initiative around Project Cortex, the Knowledge Center, the Topic Center, it's all about knowledge and expertise, connecting your employees to knowledge and vice versa. Viva Insights is about the efficiencies, work-life balance, meditation, well-being, org analytics, my analytics, workplace analytics. That's where a lot of these things fall and where a lot of the integration is with both existing and new. And there are there's the app, which is available for free, but then there's the uplift from an enterprise perspective where there is a charge for Viva Insights, and as well Topic. There is a license. Topics did ship. Insights just barely shipped, just at Ignite, and some of the apps, like I said, the employee one is available. And Viva Learning as well just shipped last week at Ignite, and it's built on Microsoft Learning, LinkedIn Learning. And you'll see a little bit more around the idea of skilling and growth and tons of integration with third parties. And really the way to understand this, especially from the announcements that just came out from Ignite, is the Viva Suite is available for $9 per user per month as a suite. And that's the new announcement at Ignite. If you wait for a year, then it's $12 a month. So there is some discounted licensing over the first year. Yeah, here's your new icons and some of the new messaging around it. Viva Insights is about balance, productivity, and well-being. Viva Topics is connecting knowledge and experts. Viva Learning, make learning a natural part of your day. It's all about that integration. Viva Connections is about staying engaged and informed. Fun new icons that just barely came out. Very fresh off the presses about a week ago. And so you can read more about the Viva Suite. And so the couple of screenshots for you. This is the Viva Insights. And on this, you can see it's an app that's pinned to the app bar on the left. You can see this is somebody filling out their preferences. And it's interesting around insights. It's connected to your calendar. It's connected to the people that you work with, and it can give you insights. If you're somebody who doesn't want it to do any of those things, yeah, you can block it. But essentially, it's AI that can give you insights on how you're working and helping you balance your life and give you recommendations around following up. There's an email that you can get that can have some of those recommendations. Hey, you said you were going to send somebody this and you haven't done it yet. Things like that. So there's some interesting insights that you can get from a personal perspective. But even when you start talking about the organization or teams, there are some uh, aspects of the workplace analytics and integration with that that are included, and I don't necessarily have too much to drill in on there, um, and I'm going to stop here as well, Chris. If there's things you want to chime in with on any of these things, feel free.
Yeah, so just real quick on the Viva Insights portion. So I think Joel touched a lot on the personal level, right? So, how do I manage my day? Who do I collaborate with? How can I set preferences and things like that? But from a manager or an org level, you can take information from your source of truth system, AD, Workday, whatever that is. You're going to upload that into a portal, and that information that you're presenting it is going to create kind of this baseline of information for your organization. From that, you can kind of mix and match within the M365 kind of data sources and start to kind of aggregate some of that and determine, what groups are collaborating well, which groups don't collaborate well. Are we seeing, because we are working remotely, that more teams are spending, time that they shouldn't be on after hours? Is there a time gap between, our offshore development and our resources on the Pacific Coast, resulting in people having overages and causing burnout and things like that, so that you can make some of those, executive level decisions and have the information that you need to make those. So the Viva Insights is essentially structured at 3 levels. It's the individual, like Joel showed, the manager level, where you can see the people that work underneath of you, and then kind of at an organizational level. And anytime the information goes past just the individual itself, like we saw on screen, all of that information is going to be anonymized. So you don't have to worry about, Big Brother essentially watching you and tracking some of those movements as well.
Yeah, my understanding is you have to have at least 9 employees to be able to get the manager level. So often I see it happening at the GPM level or division and departmental levels as well. Viva Topics. So there were a number of announcements at Ignite around Viva Topics, including the Outlook, Yammer, Bing, and People Profile Cards enhancements integrated with Viva Topics, available at the end of 2021. In Dan Holmes' session around him and Steve Wynn, they actually went into some of the Yammer integration, where the Yammer topics will be integrated with Viva Topics as well. So you'll see a lot more Yammer integration, as well as this Outlook integration as well. So there's a ton of integration coming with this idea of highlighted topics and being able to get the topic cards right in these other apps that we use every day. So that can be quite insightful from a search perspective. So a number of these integrations that are coming. What you can do today with Viva Topics is building out your topic cards, building out your topic center, and AI plugged into that and giving you recommendations. As well, you can seed your topics with your acronyms and your taxonomies and so on. Any insights that you wanted to add around Viva Topics?
No, I think you nailed it there.
Perfect. Viva Learning, a lot was actually shared at Ignite around learning, especially with the launch of Viva Learning. The way I kind of approach it is there's a bunch of stuff that's included from Microsoft Learn, Microsoft 365 training, and that's all of the modules. Like everything that Microsoft Learn is plugged into that. Everything that the full catalog of Microsoft 365 training. LinkedIn Learning has 125 of their modules, and there's more that you can purchase. So that's something to be aware of. And then there's a ton of integrations with things like Coursera, Pluralsight, InfoSec, Udemy, SAP SuccessFactors, Cornerstone On Demand, a lot of these other integrations that are now live with the launch of Viva Learning as well. And when you start thinking about what is Viva Learning, this is an app that plugs right into Teams. It also allows teams themselves to be able to add these learning modules right into their teams so that there's a tab for courses and things like that. And the idea is that you can actually share courses and share videos and tips and all these things plugged right in, and you can manage the providers and manage the a lot of that integration with Microsoft Learning.
Yeah, so the one piece that kind of will resemble Viva Insights here is this also can be done at 3 different levels. So the individual themselves can go out and see what they want to personally kind of add to their to-do list, right? So you have your own growth mindset that you want to go through and explore Power BI or data visualizations. I can go do that.
That's like
Then,
the My Learning piece, right?
yeah, and then you have kind of the YouTube algorithm, right? So using the Graph API and some of those behind the scenes tools that Microsoft has based on what you've watched already, based on what you're doing, it'll recommend some of those things, and you can actually see recommended to you there. It'll give you some videos that might be helpful. And then that third level is going to be kind of what's been assigned or what has your manager given you. So you have these at 3 different levels, just like you would with any other training or HRS system, which is great for kind of building that foundation. So the example I like to use for the manager assignments. So say we have a project kicking off in January, and I want all of my team to be up to speed on this basic module of Power BI. I can assign that out to each of those individuals and check in on their status, see how everybody's progressing through it. If I notice that there's a trend that people aren't completing it or they're struggling through, I can schedule a meeting, I can have a conversation about that and move forward. So those are kind of the 3 levels I like to at least kind of bring up in Viva Learning, because it's not something that just an individual has access to, like a Pluralsight, like a Coursera, where they go out and do their own thing. This is all within the context of teams, within kind of what they're in on their day-to-day basis.
Awesome. One thing they did announce was the acquisition of Ally, and that's one of the newest modules. It was kind of our first exposure to Ally. I'm not sure if you know much about Ally, but you can kind of see that it is additional product dashboards, company information, as well as like additional insights and product OKRs. I'm not sure what that is, the all hands data. So it's kind of rolled up organizational data. I didn't get a ton of positioning around Ally. Do you have any insights yourself, Chris?
I haven't had time to go and dig through it yet.
Yeah, and they went over it so fast in the session that I was in that I wanted to make sure I included it so you're aware of it, but I at the same time haven't had any chance to dig into it myself. That is a website, ally.io. You can go check it out. But it's the newest module, but I don't really have much more to add in addition. So we want to drill into Microsoft Viva Connections. It's available now. There's a desktop component, there's a mobile component. The mobile is supposed to be available by the end of the month. I think I've heard that for a few months, since July. It's available in 27 languages, and it is included with Microsoft 365 license or your Office 365 license. Now, high level, this is your modern employee experience. the one place to connect your news, conversations, and resources. Absolutely, there's some aspect of branding from a logo, color, icon perspective. There's a header footer as an example, personalized experience, your ability to do targeting, the AI aspect of it determining some of those dashboard elements based on your location or your group. It uses Azure AD actually for targeting when you're doing your news as an example. You can tailor the experience from that targeting perspective. And even some of those custom components. There's a lot of third-party integrations here. We'll dive into some of that. Three major components. There's the feed, the dashboard, and the resources. So we talk about the feed. This is primarily focused on the news. That's kind of the left-hand side of things. This dashboard is the cards, very actionable cards where you can actually complete tasks, focus on critical information, a lot of the announcements, functionality, or when you talk about all these other Viva modules, a lot of the Viva modules can actually feed into this dashboard. And I think I've heard a lot of experts, and what I mean by experts, a lot of MVPs in the space get confused about the difference between the dashboard and the feed. Often we'll talk about the feed being what's on the right. So don't worry so much about feed versus dashboard, but you'll notice in the mobile app that there's actually different tabs for feed and dashboard. Thanks, Becky, for the calling out what the OKR is. Objectives and key results, kind of like KPRs. Ways for departments to report on key goals and let executives track progress across groups toward corporate goals. Thanks for that, Becky. And Chris just as well in chat included a link to the partners for Viva Connections. So talking about these three focus areas, the feed, the dashboard, and the resources, there's three screenshots on the mobile app. It actually shows the dashboard first, just to add a little bit of confusion for you. And then the feed, which is the news. And what's kind of nice about news is we can actually do featured, we can do targeted. There's a lot more engagement and so on in that space. And then on the third space there is our resources, which can be links to other resources in the enterprise. They don't necessarily have to be located in SharePoint. They can just be links and navigation. When I think about the main components and the deployment of Viva Connections, I think about it from a perspective of how do I make sure that there's a very solid official source for organizational news, like setting up that official news if you haven't done that yet. I think about enabling and customizing the global navigation in the SharePoint app bar. The SharePoint app bar may be new to a lot of people, but some people may look at that and say, oh, we've already been working with the app bar, which has been out for a few months. There's search. Search is a nice visible component. Any deployment of Viva Connections as well, I would say, let's include some aspects of deploying search and ensuring that search is a really good experience since it's much more visible and integrated into the team's experience of pulling connections into teams. Targeting, personalization, our ability to share in teams. And there's a lot of work and announcements that happened at Ignite as well around sharing. So when you go to share something, you'll actually see share to teams. So being able to share those feeds or sharing into OneDrive. Modern header footer branding, that kind of stuff. A lot of good stuff there. Additional, this kind of comes from the article on the Microsoft side. Our home site app, the dashboard, the feed, and the resources, and you kind of get a little bit more insights from this side. And on this next piece, you can kind of see, again, kind of looking at the mobile app. This is an older version of it, but the idea of the global nav, the sites, the news, and files, and you can see how that's actually already changed a little bit since Ignite with the three new focus areas. One thing I would call out as well, and it is feed, okay? So we are talking the right thing here. You'll notice we're seeing when I post a news article, I can actually see how many people viewed it. I can share it. I could say share it to a specific team or that kind of thing. I can engage. There's new diversity around likes where we can actually have different colored thumbs. That's coming, as well as hearts and laughs and emoticons, that kind of experience, but as well featured news. So we can target news based on Azure AD, and then as well be able to feature news and check out the stream videos. That's right, we can actually include stream and Yammer integration with what we're doing as well. This is looking at an app and that feed, the dashboard. Here's a daily check-in. Notice these apps are integrated right into this experience so that we have these actionable cards. This one actually comes from an app that Microsoft recently has published called the Back to Work app, where people can do kind of share their health check. Hey, I'm not feeling sick. I truly am feeling good. And if you need to include your test results or whatever, you can do that too. Check that out. This is a news article. You'll notice that there's new template functionality with news. So this is clicking on, instead of having a generic news article, I can click and have my company news template, and I can manage these templates. There's some built-in ones, but we can actually build some custom templates as well, and filling out the news and creating a post, which would then put it in the queue for approval as an example. This is actually looking at hey, I'm getting ready I've been working on it. I'm copying and pasting, including copying text straight from Word with pictures, and then being able to do formatting, including like resizing the photo right from the news. That integration that Microsoft's been promising for so long is really starting to come together. And you'll notice here on the right, I have the ability to do scheduling. I have some additional properties and categories, audiences, labels, a lot more metadata and richer experience that I can then include things like, and over time, we'll see things like my ability to actually feature news articles. And with hubs, you can imagine that these articles themselves don't necessarily have to be just the official news. We can actually have our news be bubbling up from department level or division level or a location-based news as well that can then be targeted and bubbled up to the right employees based on again Azure AD groups or based on this audience configuration. You'll notice that when Microsoft talks a lot about the feed, that they will also bring in this aspect of Yammer. There's a lot of new Yammer work that's been done. I would say anybody who used Yammer three plus years ago, there's been a lot of work to rework over Yammer, and a lot of this comes with the new native integration. So you want to actually integrate with, you need to flip the switch to make sure that it's fully integrated with Microsoft 365, which if you've created a tenant in the last year or two, it probably is already done for you. But if you've got an older tenant, you need to make sure that Yammer is properly connected so that it's not a separate login, because a lot of this does require that configuration first. But from that perspective, being able to see favorite communities, joined communities, and from across the organization, company announcement, featured conversations, announcements from your communities, current and live feeds, current content from people you follow, and conversations you follow. So a lot of this Yammer integration pulls right into connections as well. So think about it as key components that when you're releasing Viva Connections, that you're thinking about Yammer from a conversation and community perspective, if you decide to use those, but also from that news perspective. And I would be thinking about information architecture as well. There's a new feature in Yammer called official communities, where again, like maybe there's a new employees that's an official channel or a leadership group that's just for leadership, that's an official community as well. And connections can be a great way to kind of share official content as well. There's even integration going the other direction of being able to pull in Q&A functionality right inside of Teams from Yammer that persists as well. And there's new analytics and insights that are promised around being able to look at how people are engaging in your communities. And even things like, hey, I don't know if there's an official answer. I want to get a lot of opinions. Let me post something out and people can actually vote stuff up too. That's kind of a new cool feature in Yammer, the new Yammer. Looking at threaded conversations and stories and video integration. I mentioned the importance of information architecture, and I'm a big fan of this idea of there's our home site at the top. This is our Viva Connections portal. Underneath that, we have our hubs where news can actually roll up into the feed and dashboard. And we also have our structured groups or unstructured sites and teams. Obviously, what you do at this level, there's a lot of decisions around what should and shouldn't be included and what gets bubbled up or connected to hubs and all this kind of jazz. I kind of see these as organizational based groups that then get connected to hubs. But you don't want to have a lot of orphaned sites here either. So I like the idea of everything should have a hub if it needs to be visible, if it needs to be under the radar, even from an under the radar perspective. How do we make sure that compliance is happening? And I understand that's a totally different connection, but information architecture wise, you should really be thinking about this as you're deploying Viva Connections. And a lot of this is why consultants can actually help you with some of these things. And this is where, from a cyclotron perspective, we've been helping a lot of customers with this idea of vivifying your intranet. And this is some special sauce that I kind of put together where it's like, all right, here's some steps that you should go to do Viva Connections right. Getting modern, setting your home site app, setting your official news, configuring the app bar and your navigation, and this is going to change over time, but configuring the Viva Connections app and then deploying it. Now, the deployment of it is changing over time, where you'll actually be able to just plug in the site in the UI. But for now, Viva Connections desktop app is the way to do it. And then the deployment of it in Teams, which obviously requires Teams admin permissions, where you can then upload that package and set the policy and the sort order and the app pin and the proper icon and so on. And I kind of look at things more holistically, and feel free to take a screenshot. But when I'm looking at things, I think about our Viva Connections portal, what of the existing intranet that we want to pull in and use from an official perspective, root site perspective, modernizing our information architecture with hubs and our groups for a targeting perspective, planning the user experience from the header, footer, site designs, all these templates from a news perspective, icons, logos, Yammer, stream integration. And like I mentioned, I do think that this is a great opportunity to include search from a connectors and acronyms and taxonomy perspective, as well as our expertise, and thinking about this from a Viva Topics perspective. And then you think about all these other components and modules. What do we want to do for Viva Topics? What do we want to do for Viva Learning? What do we want to do for Viva Insights? And how do we pull those into the dashboard and feed and ensure that we're doing a proper deployment? So I kind of see these as componentized. What do we do in SharePoint? What do we do in Teams? And then from a Viva perspective, how do we kind of work with the corporate communications team and what our processes should and shouldn't be, and for that small little piece that is the deployment. And a couple of quick examples of things we've done at Cyclotron. This is an example with one of our customers, Deckers, where you can actually see across the top, you can see it's actually fit right into Teams. We've got our app, branded app. This is a little bit further down. Instead of being the top left, you can absolutely put that icon wherever you want to. But being able to have the news and the dashboard and the feed. These are the early mock-ups. Now you'd actually have two sections where you'd have the dashboard and the feed as separate, but you can kind of see some branded examples of what we've been doing with some customers as an example. And with that, I want to hand it over to Chris, who's going to do a demo, and I'm actually going to drop the slides. And so from here on, it will be demo, and I'm actually going to join back in audio in just a moment. But you're going to be in Chris's capable hands. You got this, Chris?
I got it.
All right, thanks, man.
All right, everybody, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome. All right, so if you're getting started with Viva, I think the most important thing from kind of a overall perspective is to go through this document, and I'll put the link in the chat. This walks you through the overall process. So from a technology standpoint, it's not that hard. To the points that Joel was making a couple minutes ago, the topology, the structures, the meeting with marketing and communications, and determining what applications and what things you're going to integrate is actually the bulk of the work. When we talk about actually rolling out Viva Connections, it's rather simple. At a high level, you're going to set up a SharePoint home site within SharePoint, just like we've always done. We're going to enable our global nav, and we'll customize some of the navigation elements. We'll do some subs. You can do mega menus if you'd like. You can do all of those things. And then the next parts are all kind of Teams related. So if you're at all familiar with how to upload or pin an application, as an administrator, these things should be fairly simple. So essentially, Microsoft provides this PowerShell script. You grab the script, you fill in the details in the script for things that are associated with it. So as of right now, what we're filling in that script is, what's that home site URL? What do we want to name this application so that when people see it on that left-hand rail, that they'll easily identify it? What are the icons we want to use? What's the description? All of those kind of metadata, let's say, details. And we're going to fill those in, and we'll let this script run. Once that script runs, it's going to download this .zip solution package that we'll just upload into Teams. And then it'll appear just like any other application would. So I'm going to go ahead and hop over to my environment here, and we'll see I've logged into Teams. My left-hand side here, I have Viva Live Demo with my icon to present itself. So once I've uploaded that solution, that is going to present itself here within the context of Teams. Now, if you want to do a user group or a small beta run of this, you can go and upload this into the Teams Admin Center, which is a great idea. And this is what I recommend, that you go into the Teams Admin Center, you upload the application there, and you publish this out to a small subset of users. Reason being, you can test this out, you can troubleshoot, you can go through all of those initial betas of this before you roll this out to the general public. Now, if we're looking at this, you'll see a couple things that are different, but most of this is what we should be familiar with as SharePoint administrators. So across the top, we have our navigation. We have some of our web parts here that flow down. We have our feeds, our communications, all of these things. And then we have our footer at the bottom here. Nothing too drastically different. Now, the big changes with Viva Connections, if I go ahead and click on that icon on that left-hand side, you're going to see two things. You're going to see the hub sites that are associated with this. You're going to see the sites that I frequent or I favorited, all of those pinned there as well. And then you're going to see contextual news based on information, based on sites, based on the context of who I am, based on your audience targeting and those things that you've deployed as a part of Viva Connections. This makes all of the searching, the contextual loss as you bounce between things a lot better off. If you all were familiar with how we added Teams or SharePoint sites to Teams before, it was essentially just a tab in a Teams channel. And if you clicked on anything, you would lose the context of where you are. You would have to go back to the team or click on something else and essentially go back and find yourself. Well, with this now, I can come in here, I can click on anything between these and bounce back and forth between these without having to do that. There's no loss of functionality. There's no where am I kind of gotcha that you need to identify with. Any questions so far? Is this all making sense? Perfect. I will take that as a no. Did I hear somebody come off of mute?
I did. I just, the joy of virtual meetings. When you ask for feedback, it's hard to look at everybody's face and see if they're deer in the headlights or they're following.
Yeah, that's why I like to leave a little bit of a longer pause there. Did you have something you wanted to ask?
No, I was trying to follow what you were saying as far as how you could roll this out to a smaller audience. And I heard what you said about the Teams app, go to admin, roll out to a smaller audience. But won't that also, will that change the app bar for them? And some of the other things that PowerShell script does? So I guess let me rephrase my question is, how do you keep everything that you're doing from being deployed to a larger audience than your pilot group? And maybe it doesn't matter.
Yeah, so if you already have your SharePoint home site up, that's not going to be a big change, right?
Right.
You'll still have that portion. The portion that we're, I think, talking about here as far as like a demo is actually pinning, having that app available on that left-hand rail, having it sorted. That's where you would use that grouping to make those changes.
Gotcha.
And I'll get my Teams admin side up just so you can see that as well.
Okay, thanks.
All right, so just like we would with anything else, I've logged into our Teams admin center. What we would do here is from that PowerShell that we were talking about a minute ago, we'll get that zip file and we'll essentially just come in here and click upload. We would then be able to kind of allow, block, customize, all of those types of things for which users can then be associated with it. And then we can set up policies based on maybe a security group or just specific individuals. So let's say that we wanted to have this with just 2 or 3 IT administrators so that we can sample some stuff out. Maybe you want to do those as named users. And as we transition to a true beta or initial kind of offering, then we could expand that to security groups, have that roll out, test, do our QA and all of those processes. So in this one, I've gone ahead, I've already uploaded my application. It is sitting here. All of the details for it are presented. There's no restrictions on it. I've deployed this to everybody. And if for some reason you do have issues, you can come in here and turn off the status for allowed and prevent somebody from being able to access it. And then you can go back to the Teams store and essentially remove that app from being there if you run into true issues. So I'm going to go ahead and pause there. Any questions about the session overall, any feedback, anything else that you all need that would make sense for you?